I call to order the meeting of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers on December 2nd, 2021. The meeting is being held electronically due to the fact that we have determined it is not prudent to meet in our usual place of business or feasible to have the public there. This meeting has been noticed and conducted in accordance with Minnesota statutes, section 13D.021, and all other applicable terms of the open meeting law, including that all votes will be taken by roll call. Calling attendance, Manager Maxwell.
Here.
Manager Olson.
Here.
Manager Loftus.
Here.
Manager Sando.
Here.
Manager Miller.
Here.
Manager Hejmati.
Here.
Manager White is here. Thank you. All present and accounted for. Mr. Whisker, do we have any members of the public here this evening?
We do not.
Okay, it's interesting how I use here. That's so funny.
We did have a member of a new staff member at Macerich sit in a portion of our committee discussion. So
Oh, excellent.
for what that's worth.
Okay. On the consent agenda, there is one item. It's approval of the November 18th, 2021 board minutes. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval. Second.
Thank you, Manager Miller, second Manager Maxwell. Voting then on approving the agenda. Manager Hejmati.
Aye.
Manager Miller.
Aye.
Manager Sando.
Aye.
Manager Loftus.
Aye.
Manager Olson.
Aye.
Manager Maxwell.
Aye.
And Manager White votes aye as well. I'm not going to give a report this evening. Of course, I've been attending. This is day 2 of the MAUD annual meeting, but I wondered if other managers who've been attending wanted to make any observations at this point. Manager Olson.
Madam President, can I just interject?
Yes.
The vote that we just had was to approve the agenda of the meeting?
No, it was the consent agenda. I didn't get the agenda, did I? Or did I get the agenda?
I don't think we got to the agenda. I considered that one the agenda, and then one more would be the consent agenda.
Let me go back and get the agenda then. Thank you for pointing that out. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Manager Sando, aye.
I'll take Manager Sando's motion. Is there a second?
Hejmati.
Manager Hejmati seconds. All right then, voting on approving the agenda overall. Manager Maxwell.
Aye.
Manager Hejmati.
Aye.
Manager Loftus.
Aye.
Manager Sando.
Aye.
Manager Olson.
Aye.
Manager Miller.
Aye.
Manager White votes aye. Thank you for catching that, Mr. Smith. So any comments? Let's see, Manager Olson, you wanted to make a comment about the MAUD meeting.
Yeah, I attended meetings all day today, and although some of them were pretty familiar in terms of past experience that we've gone through, I was reinforced with what we do when the subject matter this afternoon had to do with can recreation play a role in the environmental protection that we efforts that we do. And it was centered around experiences that they've done in Iowa, but wherever they put in walking paths, wherever they put in boardwalks, wherever they were doing amenities for canoeing and boating, I thought of our greenway, I thought of our parks, Cottageville, I thought of the 325 Blake Road and the future canoe operations, and it was absolutely aligned with the efforts that we're doing. So it is very heartening to hear that reinforced in such a large scale in Iowa. Thank you.
I didn't go to that one. Sounds very interesting, but all of them are recorded, so I can go back and pick that up another time.
Yep.
Any other comments about the annual meeting? Then Manager Loftus, can you give us a report from the Operations and Programs Committee meeting?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Thank you. We had one item on our agenda tonight, and most of our members were in attendance. The administrator, Mr. Whisker, gave us a climate action framework presentation. It included a lot of background work by our Citizens Advisory Committee, which we appreciate, and we thank them for all their efforts in that. And it gave us a bunch of background on what we could anticipate, and we kind of went through a SWOT analysis on strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and how we might see ourselves in the whole issue of climate action going forward. I think there was a lot of good input and feedback from everybody. I think it's going to be an ongoing discussion. There were no formal recommendations or decisions, but a robust discussion, which I appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other events or meetings managers want to report on? Thank you. The upcoming meeting and event schedule through the end of the year is listed here, including the CAC meeting that Manager Miller will attend. We will be approving the 2022 calendar at our next meeting 2 weeks from now. Item 11.1, Ms. Moran has the Maple Creek Pond Improvement Project.
All right, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Just bear with me while I get my screen up. Oop. There we go. All right. So for this evening under action item 11.1, I'll just provide a very brief background. And then in project summary, I'll kind of talk about work to date and kind of where we left off at our last end of October board meeting regarding the Maple Creek Pond Improvement Project. And from there, I'll walk into the funding agreement, which was attachment 1 in your board packet. So feel free to follow along while I kind of tick through some of the key elements in that funding agreement. And then from there, I'll talk to kind of what's incorporated into this 2022 budget amendment that would be needed for this funding agreement. And then from there, I'll kind of pause for any questions from the board managers. And then I will hand it over for the staff recommended actions. First around the approval of the funding agreement with resolution 21-080, and then following that, then it would be the 2022 budget amendment. So in terms of background, I mean, as we had just, touched on in committee, the district recognizes that the protection and improvement of natural resources, and in particular water resources, is best achieved through the close coordination with, our cities and others acting on the landscape. And of course, that was added into the district's 2017 watershed management plan, which also included opportunity-based stormwater management projects within our CIP. And so one of those was for the Gleason Lake subwatershed, and with the intent of reducing stormwater volume and nutrient loads to impaired waters, which Gleason Lake is. And in this plan as well, the district had flagged the need to partner with those who are changing the landscape. So this, of course, led the district staff to begin developing the responsive program, which is currently in its pilot phase. And so under this pilot phase, the city of Plymouth had coordinated and reached out to the district to identify opportunities that were in the city's own CIP and how they could integrate water quality improvements to really benefit impaired Gleason Lake. And so based off of that coordination, the city submitted a request for funding to support the Maple Creek Drainage Improvement Project. That was in the end of June of this year. And so the district from there reviewed and refined and also vetted the modeling and feasibility work with the district engineer and the city between July and early September of this year. Based off the evaluation through the pilot phase of the responsive program. So thinking about, project benefit, resource need, cost, coordination, partnership. With all of that, we ended up recommending funding support for water quality improvements located at Maple Creek Pond. So in particular, this iron enhanced filtration bench. Based off of the refined embedded modeling, we're expecting 19 pounds of TP removal from this. And then in terms of eligible project costs, that's actually coming in at around 200,000. And that's where the district outlined 50% taking into considerations, again, around benefit, resource need, level of coordination with this, not to exceed 100,000. And so I do just want to note this is going to be the last time this project would be in front of the board in terms other than anything for permitting, which we are currently working with the city on. And so at our last board meeting in October, when this was in front of you all, the board did approve project ordering with understanding that any funding approval would be contingent on the board's approval of a funding agreement, which would also then require, of course, this 2022 budget amendment. And so at our last meeting, we did walk through that draft term sheet that was included in your packet. And, this draft term sheet was, developed in coordination with district staff, our legal counsel, the district engineer, as well as the city. And so while we were developing this, we recognized, for the terms, we're not only looking to develop a term sheet, and then ultimately a funding agreement for this project, but ultimately also for the program itself. And so one of the kind of key discussions around that was, how do we, scale or address terms and requirements based on the level of support and level of uncertainty or risk for our project. And so, as we had evaluated this project, we, came in at that kind of 50% on the lower end in terms of funding compared to a project like Taft Legion, right? Where, we had a much more investment in terms of funding for that project. And this project, we also, it's a very well-known BMP, which provides us more, certainty and around kind of predicted performance compared to maybe a newer, more innovative technology. So with all of that in mind, we scaled back the terms related to performance standards and monitoring that align with our existing programmatic maintenance agreement that we have recently assigned or in with the city. And so we took all of that with the draft term sheet, and then we worked with the city, legal counsel, district engineer to really round out this funding agreement that is attached in your packet you see this evening. And so with that funding agreement, which is attachment 1 in your packet, of course, with funding for this piece, we recommended that 50% of design and construction costs with that cap of 100,000. In terms of reimbursements, we set that with 90% at the project of substantial completion and withholding 10% until we receive both the as-built design and also had confirmation around the revegetation as well. In terms of design within this funding agreement, the city is currently working on final design and working through permitting with the district as well. And so the district would need to provide that concurrence at 90% and just make sure all the permitting needs are addressed as well as everything's in alignment from what we had planned with the feasibility studies. And then for construction, I think there's fairly standard language in there around kind of coordination with the contractor and communication between the city and the district. The district will be notified to allow us to inspect placement of the bed and bed materials on site. So that's the filter bench itself in Maple Creek Pond. And then also per the district engineer recommendations, we have them testing the sand medium once it's put in place. And of course, the district has the right to inspect, at reasonable times, such as vegetation reestablishment, substantial completion, and so on. In terms of the maintenance section, as I mentioned earlier, we really wanted to strike that right balance to ensure the terms are protecting the district on one hand, but on the other that we aren't like disproportionately putting, burden on these partners for the funds that the district is providing. So we don't want to make it a disincentive to partner with us. And so we recognize, with this program, we may want more robust requirements for larger projects or projects that have more uncertainty, but we're also willing to scale back requirements in terms for, lower risk or lower sum projects. Again, trying to make that balance. And so with that, again, we scaled back the terms related to performance standard and monitoring. And again, this is all aligned with our programmatic maintenance agreement, which is also from the state stormwater manual in terms of how we would test, how we could test the medium, and then if the medium needs to be addressed at a certain piece of time, then there's steps to move forward with that. That's all outlined in that attachment to the funding agreement itself. And so with that piece, we do have feasible action language in that funding agreement, which is standard language that the district has used for many projects, but it's also the same language that was in the TAP Legion agreement with Richfield. And so I did just want to flag that, but again, this comes back to that scaling in terms of we have kind of these reasonable actions for them, and I'm losing my train of thought, so my apologies, but what I'm trying to tell you is for this feasible action piece, we have that standard language that's for the TAP Legion itself, and then for us for this project, because we recognized it's a lower amount of money, we have more certainty around the BMP. I think all of that is why we feel comfortable with this scaled back language for performance. And I think I will pause there because I somewhat butchered that, so my apologies. But if legal counsel or Becky, if you want to chime in anything around the funding agreement.
Madam President,
Yes.
I would just offer, we've had a good round of conversation with the staff about not only this project, but thinking through the responsive program generally and being mindful of precedents. We, I think, are all still smarting from the lessons learned from the Taft Legion project and want to make sure that going forward, we do have language that protects the district in those kinds of circumstances. But the staff have carefully thought about that as to this kind of project, the scale of investment that you have. I think it also should be noted the city wasn't terribly excited about embracing more onerous terms. And so there's a balance, as Ms. Moran stated. So we just want to make sure that the board is well aware that you could have more aggressive language that would put the burden of performance more on the city or share it more directly. But in this case, it seems appropriate to kind of scale it the way Ms. Moran has outlined.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
And are there any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I will move us over to the 2022 budget amendment.
Sounds like you should go ahead.
And so the next piece then is the 2022 budget amendment. And so while we were working with the city to refine feasibility and modeling, the board was also working on the 2022 budget, which you guys adopted in September of this year. And at that time, the responsive CIP fund line item had a budget of 0, as you can see on the left hand of your screen. We did have 250,000 held and assigned. And so what this budget amendment is doing is moving 100,000 of that from assigned into the responsive CIP fund budget, as you can see on the right of your screen. So this will increase the 2022 budget by 100,000. But I do want to be clear that this will not change or impact the tax levy. And so with that, are there any questions regarding the budget amendment? And with that, I will leave up for the recommended actions for both of the resolutions.
Thank you, Ms. Moran. Is there a motion to adopt resolution 21080 for the funding agreement?
So moved, Hejmati.
Thank you, Manager Hijmati. Is there a second?
So
Loftus
moved.
second.
Loftus seconds. Any further discussion on the funding agreement before we vote? All right, then voting on 21080, Manager Olson,
Aye.
Manager Miller,
Aye.
Manager Sando,
Aye.
Manager Loftus,
Aye.
Manager Hijmati,
Aye.
Manager Maxwell,
Aye.
and Manager White votes aye. Moving then to resolution 21081, the budget amendment. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved, Hajmati.
Thank you, Manager Hijmati. Is there a second?
Second, Loftus.
Thank you, Manager Loftus. Any further discussion on the budget amendment?
I would just thank the staff and legal for applying lessons learned. I appreciate the note, the side note.
Hello.
Thank you.
Your mom is talking about getting you a dog. And, Make sure
Any other,
I can turn it back on if you want to hear about the dog.
I think we're good.
Moving on.
Anything else on the budget amendment? Very well, then voting on that resolution 081, Manager Sando,
Aye.
Manager Loftus,
Aye.
Manager Maxwell,
Aye.
Manager Miller. I'll
Aye.
come back. Oh, aye, okay. Manager Olson.
Aye.
Manager Hijmati
Aye.
and Manager White votes aye. Thank you, Ms. Moran. That's very nice to get that taken care of. We may now move to the administrator's report.
Thank you, President White. One umbrella item for tonight with a couple of nested pieces underneath it. It's just about that time of year, as you know, Sherry, where we're beginning the process of engaging our partners. President White and I are starting our program of annual connection with Hennepin County Commissioners over December, January. So we're actively getting those scheduled. Manager Olson and I have begun reaching out slowly to Carver County Commissioners on the other side of the district. And then I just make a note that in the lower watershed, we've had some newly elected officials reach out. We're starting the process of scheduling meetings with President White and Manager Miller, given their familiarity with some of the newly elected council members and commissioners. And I talked to Manager Hijmati. In the new year, we might anticipate some more formal engagement between the park board and city council, at which point we'd be folding in Arun as part of official liaison delegation to South Minneapolis and the Nokomis area. And that's all I have for you, unless you have questions about anything else that's happening.
Nothing about the dam operations tonight.
No, because the last update that I gave was it's shut, and that's been the update that I've given you, I think, since July. But yeah, it's been winterized, and we covered that at the last meeting, so it is officially closed for the season.
Wonderful. That's why I knew you wouldn't have any comments.
Yep, not until spring. Pray for
All
some
right.
snow.
Well, thank you everyone for a great committee meeting and for the board meeting. The meeting is adjourned.
Good evening.
Night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good
night.
night. Thank you, everybody, and committees.
Have a good one. Take care.
Thanks, James.
Thank you, Steve. Bye, Sherry.
Goodbye, James. Thank you.